Hello, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Professor, a feature that is supported by you, the viewers, not only in that we depend upon your contributions to make it possible to continue our work, but also in that we rely on you to pose the questions that we answer here on everything from history to economics, political philosophy, culture, great men or great fools in history, all those things that matter to us in trying to understand our life together in society and to improve the way that we live.
All right, here's one you like from Mark. He's asking, in your efforts to fix the Canadian constitutions, have you thought of trying to bring back the 1960 Bill of Rights?
I have thought of trying to bring it back, but although it is a worthy document, it's not sufficient. And it's not sufficient for two reasons. One being that there are certain things that it needs to include that it doesn't. For instance, it does say that you can't be deprived of property except through due process, but it needs to add for public use and with just and timely compensation. I mean, there are things that you could fiddle with, and there might be symbolic virtue in reenacting it. But the fundamental problem with the 1960 Bill of Rights is that it was just one more statute. That is an ordinary act of parliamentary legislation. And there is a fundamental and sound constitutional principle that no parliament can bind its successor, which means that no matter what law is passed at any given time, it can subsequently be overridden. You can pass another law that expressly repeals it or amends it, or you can simply pass a law that contradicts it. And by precedent and by, again, this constitutional principle, the more recent law, to the extent that it conflicts with the older one, supplants it. So to pass a Bill of Rights is no guarantee that the rights in it will be respected. Parliament doesn't even have to say it's overriding those rights. It just has to pass another act that doesn't respect them in some way. This is why you need rights to be entrenched in the Constitution. And as people who have watched our Magna Carta and Fix the Constitution documentaries may be aware, there's a misconception out there that entrenching rights in the Constitution is an American thing, some Yankee innovation, a departure from the British tradition. But that's not true at all. From Magna Carta onward, as the parliamentary system evolved in Britain, legislators had power to make law, to change law, to set tax rates, to do all kinds of things, but only subject to the limitations on their actions imposed by Magna Carta. There were fundamental rights that could not be altered by legislation because Magna Carta was not an ordinary piece of legislation. And gradually over time, Parliament became more and more powerful in Britain, and the extra parliamentary checks on what could happen became weaker and weaker. And this was fine as long as the people controlled the Parliament, and the Parliament saw its job as restraining the executive. But at a certain point, as the executive began to take over Parliament, it turned out that making legislators omnipotent meant that there was no protection for citizens' rights against the executive and the legislature working together. And that's why the Americans, when they brought in their constitution coming from we the people and standing above the legislature and the executive, were trying not to change their system of government, but to preserve it against changes that were harmful. And so in Canada, too, when we brought in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms as something that stood above ordinary legislation, there was some intelligence, some respect for tradition, something close to genius in doing that. But there was also a bunch of idiocy because, unfortunately, it granted rights with one hand and took them away with the other. Not just the notwithstanding clause, but also that critical Section 1 that says that the rights are guaranteed only to the extent that deprivations can be justified in a free and democratic society. It was just carte blanche for the political class to take away your rights when inconvenient to them to respect them. So the contents of the Bill of Rights are pretty good, although we have in our Fix the Constitution documentary, we've also produced a draft constitution that has a more robust Bill of Rights, more complete, stronger protections. But critically, it has to be more than just a statute. It has to be adopted by the will of the people, as Magna Carta was. Nowadays, we would need to do it through a referendum, which is precisely what we recommend. And then it limits what Parliament can do, even if all the parties agree, even if the Prime Minister agrees, even if the courts agree. I mean, there's a limit to what you can do about judicial activism that willfully misreads the Constitution. But essentially, yeah, the protections in the Bill of Rights are mostly good. We need more of them, but we need them to be more deeply entrenched, as Magna Carta was, as the U.S. Constitution was, as our Charter of Rights ought to have been if it were not such a weaselly document. So, yeah, we need a new Bill of Rights in a new constitution approved by the people, standing above the legislature, and not subject to such limitations as our betters feel appropriate. One that really guarantees our rights, just as Magna Carta did.
All right. So that's not really. That's too bad, though, because it's a good Bill of Rights. I did like it.
Oh, yeah, it's certainly a nice try, and there was much that was good there. I even think reenacting it symbolically would have some virtue. sort of drawing a line, but it's a line that the next Parliament could easily cross. And if we're really serious about this, we should not let "yes, we can't" be our national slogan. We should say we need a better constitution. We can have a better constitution. We are Canadians. We are competent people capable of seizing the moment. Let's do it.
All right, then.
And speaking of that, if you do enjoy the feature, please come to the website, make a pledge, Patreon or PayPal, and keep us able to produce these features for you. And send in questions.
Yes, because I can't make them up. I wouldn't
No,
want to
we
anyway.
never do that. That would be cheating.
No.
We do not seed the questions.
No. But sometimes we do throw suggestions, like for the one you did about the suburbs and why you hated them in parking lots, and finally somebody asked a question.
Yeah, we're allowed to fish.
Right. Do you have anything to fish for right now?
No,
Not at the moment. You're
we're
happy?
getting good questions, but
All
we
right.
could always use more.
Okay. Thanks for that, folks. If you would like to get in on the fun, go to the URL on your screen and all the details will be explained. Thanks, and see you next time.